So if you're an ambitious woman who has spent her life, succeeding and reaching for goals and achievements, and it feels like emotional eating is something you can't fix, you can't seem to control food or your body, it's not that you're broken, it's that you learned that control would get you the result, but it hasn't. And so what I learned is that when we stop trying to fix ourselves and we start learning to understand ourselves, this is where everything changes. So on the outside, it looked like I was really smart and I went to university and I was a chemist and I went back to school for teaching and I was doing all of these things. But under the surface, I couldn't control food or my body. I felt so out of control and I was trying everything from a really young age to get my emotional eating, to get my out of control behavior with food under control. So I would swing, I would restrict, I had disordered eating, and I tried all the diets and I was trying all of the different practitioners and professionals to help me. I was trying to fix myself because I really thought I was broken. I didn't understand how I could be hungry all the time. I would compare myself to my friends and it seemed so easy for them to be okay in their bodies, but it was so difficult for me. And it wasn't until I tried everything and I was so disciplined and just so rigid about it that it kind of broke me. And it didn't matter that I was still, I was seeing a nutritionist and I was seeing a therapist and a chiropractor and all these things. It didn't help. And I reached this breaking point where I needed to stop doing everything I had done and kind of just figure it out. And this was really my rock bottom where I ended up changing everything in my life. I moved from, Toronto to Korea. So I was an analytical chemist. I moved to Korea to teach. I was living in a new country and a new culture, and I needed to sort out what was going on for me. And I thought if I changed everything, that this pattern would just break. I wouldn't have to deal with it because all of the things I was trying, it wasn't working. And so what happened was my emotional eating came on even stronger, and I had to figure out a new way because all of the discipline and control and trying, it wasn't working to help me. And so being in this really big rock bottom, having moved and my emotional eating was intensifying, I had to figure out what was working. I had to figure out why I was emotionally eating, why I was triggered. And so I started to dive deeper into this pattern. I just started to research my behavior and what was going on. And I finally landed on a resource that helped me understand that I was an emotional eater because I had all of the symptoms of an emotional eater. And no one had told me this. No one had kind of laid it out for me after seeing, so many practitioners that would have been dealing with women who emotionally eat. This is very common. I see this with a lot of my clients. I see this everywhere. And I just really see this pattern. But my therapist didn't say that. She actually handed me a diet book. My personal trainer, chiropractor, nutritionist, they're all dealing with food and health and our body. And no one had made it clear to me that this was my pattern and this is what was going on. And so I realized that I wasn't hungry all the time. I was sort of triggered all the time and going to food to soothe myself. And so something deeper was going on under the surface. And even though I had been going to therapy and, trying to get in touch with my emotions, trying to figure out my emotional landscape, it was not getting into these deeper roots. It was not connecting the dots and the associations and the way I used food. It was not helping me with this at all. It was very disconnected. And that's where I had to start putting the pieces together of all of these different things that I was learning and to see how it was impacting me. And so as I started to really put the pieces together, I saw that emotional eating at its deepest root is not really about the food. It is about how we relate to ourselves, how we connect to ourselves. Can we see ourselves? So a lot of approaches to emotional eating that are out there are about you controlling food because that's what we see on the surface. You feel out of control with food. You're eating more than you should. You feel like you can't get ahead with food. You feel out of control and uncomfortable in your body. So of course, we want to work with food and our body, and it seems really obvious. And it's not really about that. It's about how safe you feel in your life. And this sense of safety is not about, do I live in a good neighborhood or anything like that? It's an internal safety. Do you feel safe with yourself? Do you feel like you can hold yourself through the discomfort of life, through the stressors of life, through the uncomfortable emotions of life? And most likely the answer is no. And so that's why you go to food. You're using food as this buffer to create a sense of safety, of soothing, of comfort, because you didn't have this when you were growing up. And so what I realized is that there was so much more going on with my emotional eating. I was triggered into situations that I would lean on food to create safety for me, to provide some kind of numbness, to provide a buffer to the world. And I really needed to learn how to be with what was going on deeper inside of me, to relate to myself better, to care for myself, to meet my deeper emotional needs, something that I wasn't shown as a child, and I didn't develop that skill. So, I always share that emotional eating is this coping mechanism, but coping mechanisms are things we use to make ourselves feel okay in a situation we can't control. We feel out of control, and so we create coping mechanisms to have a sense of control, a sense of safety, a sense of security. And so food becomes that buffer for us. But it's not really about the food. And I started to really learn this when I was in Korea, because I started to look at when I was triggered and what it was triggering inside of me, all of these emotions that I didn't know how to move through or express. I was a very quiet child. I wasn't taught how to move through my emotions. I had to kind of keep it all in. For fear of being criticized or judged, or just, being in a very stressful household. And so I kept a lot of that in, and it had to go somewhere. It went into, when you keep all of your emotions in, they're very uncomfortable. They're meant to create almost like discomfort or pain or a sensation in your body, because they're giving you information, and you're meant to move through them and to feel them and to understand them and to express them. And when you don't have an environment like that, you have to cope. You have to figure out a way to buffer it so you can still feel safe. So if you can eat and cover your emotions, then that's what you do. And it temporarily gives you relief from what's going on. And so I started to see how this all played into how I grew up, and also, having certain triggers around food and how much I should eat, and triggers around my body, and just feeling all of these emotions. And so I started to see how it was all connected. And as I started doing this deeper work on my emotional eating, I started to have a healthier relationship to food. I could sort of see the nuances of where my diet mentality would, create a trigger and trigger me into shame, into my emotional eating, or in my body. And so I started to put these pieces together. And as I started healing that deeper root of my emotional eating, I started to feel just more at ease around food, to the point where I could actually make changes to the way I was eating. I could optimize it, if you will. I could incorporate foods that I could actually notice, the foods that felt good in my body, that digested better. I could actually use food in a different way. And the same with my body. My body started to want to move, want to go work out. And I could start wanting to optimize my workouts, or want to, obviously listening to what my body wanted, but sometimes my body wanted to lift heavier weights. It wanted to get stronger, or it wanted to stretch out, or it wanted to do yoga, or it wanted to do, running, or maybe be more laid back. So I started to tune into my body to see what it needed at any given time. And I started to create a connection to food and my body, but it was because I had this deeper connection to myself. I was relating to myself in a different way. I was creating creating more security and safety for myself internally and not using food. I was actually giving myself what I needed growing up at a younger age to meet my emotional needs. And this started to just be what I used in my day-to-day life. I could see when I was triggered, I could start optimizing how I was eating and moving, and it was all coming from within. It was an internal motivation to create better health in my body. And that's how I started to heal my emotional eating. And it's what I teach to clients. And it became the Emotional Eating Evolution program. All of these pieces are in there in a way where it helps someone step by step move through this process, versus when I was doing it, I was just, taking the next step, trying the next thing, and feeling into what worked for me, because I had to create that because there wasn't anything out there helping me to put these pieces together. And so this helped me build a lot of internal confidence, because I could see how my emotional eating was dissolving, and that naturally made me feel like more at ease, because I was creating that calm and ease in my body. I was creating that confidence. I felt more confident about the foods I was eating, about the way I was moving my body, because it was coming from inside of me. I wasn't listening to something external. I started to learn how to connect back to myself. So I find when I'm working with women, they are very ambitious, and maybe you don't even recognize yourself in that word ambition. They're very go-getter. They want to grow and evolve, and they can be very disciplined and very controlling, and they think they need more willpower and discipline, and if they can finally pin that down, that they will get the result they want. And it's not really about that. You are not broken. You don't need to be fixed. You need a new way of relating to yourself so that you can get to this ease and peace and calm around food and in your body. And so what my clients need is a way to start connecting back to themselves, connecting back to food and their body, but connecting deeper than that, connecting to what's coming up for them, what's driving their emotional eating, and relating to themselves in a more compassionate way, in a more kind way, so that they can actually meet those deeper emotional needs. And then it becomes easy to be at ease around food and in your body. So if what I've shared today here resonates and you want to get started on your journey to resolving your emotional eating, the first step I always recommend to clients is to start learning to see when you're emotionally hungry and when you're truly hungry, and to see what's triggering that pattern into emotional hunger. And if you want to get started on that, my free guide, What Are You Truly Hungry For?, you can download it below at the link. And if you want deeper support, I invite you to find out more about the Emotional Eating Evolution program. This is my 12-week container with the step-by-step process, the support. We have office hours, one-to-one sessions with me, and the deeper tools to shift this pattern so that you are reconnecting back to yourself. You're resolving what's driving this pattern, and so that you can get to ease and confidence around food and in your body in a sustainable way. So thank you so much for watching. If you have any questions about what I've shared, please let me know. Please be sure to like and subscribe, and I look forward to sharing more with you, and I hope you have a great day.